to Career Alive. This is our live series where we talk about finding a career that makes you come alive. And today is already our 12th episode. Can you believe that? And
Yeah.
I know. And today we're going to be talking about how to deal with difficult managers. What a topic. But let's start off by introducing ourselves. Anna, why don't you start?
Sure. So, if you are new here, hi, I am Ana Goehner. I help achievers set boundaries and find healthy work environments. I write about careers, job search, boundaries, work environment, and mindset. I'm originally from Brazil, but I've been to the US for many years, and I am tuning in from North Carolina. How about you, Teresa?
I love being here with you, Anna. I'm Theresa. I guide women in discovering what they're meant to do and empower them to find a fulfilling career. I'm a career clarity coach and the owner of Career Bloom. And I am originally from Germany, but very fortunate to be calling Hawaii my home. I've been living here for 13 years and absolutely loving it. Especially when I see so many others with a sweater out there. It's nice to still be sitting here in a t-shirt, not to make anyone jealous. If you are tuning in, please drop in the chat, say hi, let us know that you're here, let us know where you're tuning in from. We always love to see that you're here and let us know. And also, as always, if you have any questions at all, you can drop them into the chat at any time. A heads up for today's topic, we're going to be talking about difficult managers. So this is a public live event that if you drop something in the chat, anyone can see it. So if you have a question, and you don't want that to be publicly seen, feel free to drop that into the private chat to us, and then we can answer it anonymously. So just a heads up there. So let's talk about difficult managers. I think all of us have probably experienced at least one in our lives. And a lot of times we hear the quote that people quit managers and not jobs. And there is actually data from the DDI's Frontline Leaders Project, and they found that 57% of people have left a job to get away from a bad manager. So more than half of us have left a job to get away from a bad manager. Isn't that crazy? That is a lot of people who quit, not just their jobs, but their managers. So what can you do when you are in a situation where you're dealing with a manager you're not in alignment with? Well, if you know me, I always love talking about clarity. And I think that is a really important piece here too, is first get clarity on what exactly it is that you need. So what do you need in a manager to be successful? Is it important for you that your manager is supportive? Do you want a manager who always has your back and will never throw you under the fire? Or is it important for you that your manager is inspiring and supporting your dreams and motivate you to achieve more in your career? Or maybe you're someone who's really important is to have a manager who's empathetic, who can put themselves into your shoes and care about you and your well-being and your motivation and your work satisfaction at work. So there's different things, or maybe you're really something else that is important to me, for example, is transparency. Does the manager share the steps behind what's going on? Do they explain why you need to do what you're supposed to do? Are they truthful, and do they involve you in big or small decisions? Another thing that's super important to me too is positivity, because that can be really draining if you work for a manager with a really negative attitude. So having a manager who's positive and has an optimistic approach makes it so much more enjoyable than to work for a manager who is just always has this negative vibe that you don't want to be around. So these are a couple of examples that you want to be clear on for yourself before we even talk about your manager, because you first need to know what it is that you really need in a manager. And once you have that clarity, you can start dealing with that manager itself or the problem with your manager. And I'm going to let Anna take over here.
Yes. So to tag along what Teresa was saying, we all like to think that we're self-aware, right? And but I I personally believe this is an ongoing process because as humans, we are always evolving, we're changing, right? So does our sense of ourselves, right? So self awareness is knowing how your actions, thoughts, or emotions, the do's or the don'ts, how do they align with your internal standards, right? So I want to give you all like a different thought process here. So maybe we perceive our managers as difficult, and there might be some truth to that. But sometimes, like when we reflect around the issue, is it the manager or is it us? Meaning, have you changed your standards? Have you changed in a way that what you used to accept before you don't accept it anymore, right? So, are there behaviors that you can't tolerate anymore, right? Do you see your colleagues complaining about the same issue as you do often, or maybe they're not complaining, or maybe everything is good for them, but it's not for you, and that's okay. This is what I want to emphasize here. It's okay if you need to maybe seek change. It's okay if you try this change in the current environment and you just you had the conversations but it's just not leading anywhere. Maybe you need to change, meaning maybe you need to find a better work environment, right? So the idea that I want to give here is that sometimes when you are self-aware and you understand what is good for you and what is not serving you anymore, maybe you can find that somewhere else. You can try where you are, but if it doesn't, after a conversation, it doesn't work. I mean, it's nothing changes. You can go somewhere else, right? So I want to also talk about boundaries because this is a topic that I love talking about it. Um, don't be afraid to say, I am not comfortable doing this. I'm not comfortable sharing this. I'm not comfortable taking this approach. Put it on you and say, I am not comfortable doing something, right? Don't apologize for being assertive. And I want to say this. I wrote a post this week about it. It's like being assertive is not being mean or being aggressive by any means. You can be very polite and firm and still be assertive. And when you communicate with people, when you're trying to set a boundary, I can't do this now, or maybe you need to send this to someone else, or there are multiple ways, right? I'm not going to go into like things and give you ideas of what you can say right now, but you can set boundaries. Let your manager know that you aren't available for something after hours, for example, or maybe when you're sick or on vacation, set that boundary. Let them know that you're not available. Uh, you can say no graciously. No is yes, as we hear, it's a full sentence. Like it's you don't need to go beyond no, but you can also say no gracefully. You can politely decline something. You know, you better decline a project or gracefully say that you can't take on something than overcommit and not deliver. That may look even like, worse, like in your performance review and all these different things, right? So speak up and advocate for yourself. Try your best, not to become your environment, which is very hard. I know that when you are in an environment that doesn't suit you, especially if you're in a toxic environment, it's really hard to not become that environment. Um, so, for example, if your manager call you out in front of others, have a conversation, a private conversation, and explain to them how that made you feel. Because sometimes, based on their views, based on their beliefs, they may not see this as something bad. It's just the way they lead. But then when you point out and say, I didn't like when you did this, or I didn't feel good, or I felt this or that because you called me out in front of people, maybe that would help them understand the way you want to be treated. And address the issues privately. You don't need to go to down their level and try to start I don't know, a conflict or something as soon as you hear a negative or criticism or something along those lines. Try to have a private conversation. So, and the last thing I want to say here is know when to walk away, right? So your relationship with your manager is the most important relationship you are going to have in a job. And I'll say this because they are the person, I mean, that's the person responsible for your promotion. That's the person responsible for your growth. You can learn 1 million different things at work, but if you don't have that person cheering you on and seeing all the hard work you're doing, you can have lots of colleagues at work, but they can't make that happen for you. They can't promote you, right? So don't wait until your environment makes you feel burned out, depleted. Don't wait until it's unbearable that you wake up every morning crying. So next thing you know, you're moody, you are angry, you are negative because you start, all these different things that are happening in the work environment start affecting you outside of work, right? Because you start like that behavior starts happening outside of work. So staying in this environment for too long won't make you a more valuable employee. So you can seek change. That's the final message here. Like, we all think, when we think about dealing with a difficult manager, we all want to run away, and I get it. That's the ultimate thing that we all seek, right? Sometimes you can talk to them and try to make things better, but if the overall environment is unbearable, you may need to think about your exit strategy. So yeah.
Great point, Anna. Yes. And I relate to so much of what you were saying, because especially early on in my career, I had managers who I did not enjoy working for at all. My very first manager was really intimidating. It was maybe the first week on the job where he pulled me aside. I worked for a rental car company, so it was in a parking garage, and he yelled at me for something that was no fault of my own, because it was 3 months customer service score, and the customer service scores we got were really bad. But I've only been there 1 week out of those 3 months, so I was very little responsible, and it was my first week on the job. I had no idea what I was doing. But having that manager, having that as your first impression when you start a career, it can be really tough, and it definitely was for me. And then even later on in my career, I had managers who were they tell you one thing in the morning and then something completely different in the afternoon. Really play favorites. They love certain employees and they hate others, and there's like a completely different treatment. Again, the intimidating part. And that was all in my 20s, and I didn't feel comfortable speaking up. I was easily intimidated, and I was afraid to say something. I was afraid to set boundaries. So I really love, Anna, that you shared all of those strategies, that yes, even though you might feel intimidated, take time for yourself, reflect on what is important to you, and then seek that one-on-one conversation. Even though it is scary, you really need to seek that conversation and tell your managers how you feel in order that for there to be any change. And if that doesn't go successful, then as Anna said, maybe it is time to seek change.
Yeah.
And one thing that I believe can really help when it comes to talking to your manager is understanding their perspective and their communication style. So let's start with, what is their perspective? How does your manager see the world? Can you put yourself in their shoes and understand, like, what does your manager care about? What is important to him or to her? What keeps them up at night? What do they worry about? What would they love to do more of, and what would they love to do less of on a daily basis? What are they afraid of? Because we're all humans, we're all afraid of things. So what is it that they're afraid of? Are they maybe facing a lot of pressure from their next level of management and they're afraid of failing? Or are they afraid of not meeting performance standards? Or maybe they are afraid of difficult conversations too. Because we are all humans in the end, right? How important is it for your manager to impress others? And how do they measure success and failure? So really take a moment to put yourself in their shoes and understand the world from their perspective. And that can be quite eye-opening to to realize like, oh, maybe it is not personal, maybe it's not you, maybe they are under a lot of pressure, or maybe they are afraid of certain things, or maybe they don't know how to have these conversations, and it is really them and not you. While that doesn't immediately change the situation, it can really help you feel better, because you realize like, oh yeah, this is not me. And then you can take a step back and approach the situation from a different perspective. And the other thing I want to share is, and I'm going to share my screen here really quick, is what is your manager's communication style? And I found this really great graph. And think about your manager, or if you think about your last managers, if you're currently not employed, and how, when you're going to the top here, how task or goal oriented are there, and how people or relationship oriented are there? Because there's people who are really driven by tasks, by deadline, by goals, and there's other people who are really relationship oriented, and they care about much more about the people than about the task or the goals. And then on the other arrow here from left to right is, are they a slow-paced or a fast-paced person? Do they really take time to think things through and are really slow in making decisions? Or are they a really fast-paced thinker and move quickly and take action quickly? So rate your manager on these two lines or these two arrows and understand which quadrant they fall in. So for example, if your manager is very, very task oriented and a very fast paced manager, most likely they're going to be a dominant, they're going to be very direct, they're going to be decisive, and they're results focused. That could be difficult if you're more on the slower pace side and really like to think things through, and you're much more people oriented, and you bring the steadiness and you're patient, loyal, and team focused. You might have to, once you have that awareness, when you talk to your manager, adjust your communication style and prepare when you go into a meeting, and know that he or she wants answers fast. He wants you to take action. He is very direct, so there's no indirect communication. So it's something to be aware of and prepare for. Or if it's the opposite, if you're someone who's like impatient, and I kind of fall in that spectrum, I'm very fast paced. Like, I don't like to like talk around circles. I just like, okay, this is what we need to do. Let's make it happen. But if I work with a manager who's more on the slower paced side, I need to slow myself down and consciously be like, oh no, I know this person needs to think things through. They need time to reflect before they can make a decision, and to respect that in each other. So this is a tool that can really help you understand your manager's communication styles and then adjust your own to match that. Now, the last topic I want to talk about, and that's a question I've gotten a lot from people over the last week, was micromanagement. How do we deal with a micromanaging manager? And Anna, when we talked about it, she pointed out that a lot of time that comes down to a need for control, or a lack of trust, or also problems with communication. So what can you do if your manager drives you crazy because they manage you to the smallest little itty bitty detail? Okay, so let's talk through 5 steps what you can do if that is you in this situation. So number 1, my first recommendation is to talk to them directly. And again, I know that can be uncomfortable, that can be a scary conversation to have, but prepare for it. Know that they're human, that they also, in the end, they also want to progress in their career, in their job. So what do you have in common? Where do you align? And how can you approach that conversation with them? And then directly ask them for more autonomy. Maybe remind them of a task or project that you successfully completed. And then you can make a suggestion like, okay, how about you gave me this project? How about you let me run this project for 1 week? And then after 1 week, I'll give you a full debrief in whatever format you prefer, and you have that on your desk Thursday at 3 p.m. But let me do this on my own for 1 week, or maybe for 3 days to start with, so that they can still building trust, and they know, okay, Thursday, 3 o'clock, I'm going to get my update. And maybe that allows them to give you the space in the meantime. You can also ask your manager, what can you do better? Because maybe your manager has like a different perception about your work, or maybe there is a part missing where they feel they need to micromanage you. So what is it that they want you to improve in, so they they can give you more space. Asking that question directly can be really helpful to also address it with them. Then, as Anna already spoke about, share with them how it makes you feel. You can tell them, like, it makes me feel really stressed if I have to constantly give you feedback. It really slows my work down because I spend so much of my day updating you on what I'm doing that I don't actually get to move my projects forward. Or what other impacts does the micromanaging have on you? If they have a better understanding how that makes you feel, it helps them see your perspective and might be able to change their behavior. And then the last piece is, if nothing you've done works and you try to talk to them, you try to meet their standards, you try to come in alignment, nothing works, it might be time to go above them. And I'm gonna let Anna jump in here and let her share her take on when is it appropriate to go above a manager or to HR.
Yeah, so let's say you try to have those conversations, you try to set boundaries, you're trying, right? You're not just thinking or talking about it with your colleagues, you're trying, you're talking to your manager, but you don't see any improvements. Maybe you see it for like a day, maybe for a week, and then afterwards, everything is back to what it used to be, right? So if you don't feel safe, doing so, and I understand what I'm going to talk about next, may not everybody feels comfortable doing that, but if you feel safe to do so, it may be a time to approach HR. So I've worked in many HR departments or as an employee inside a company with an HR department. Some were on site, some were not on site. And they were, sometimes there were the perception that, oh, maybe they're not going to help me, but they are a lot of HR teams out there that they're really willing and able to help you. They're willing and able to keep this conversation. It's a thing in HR. They can't keep this conversation private, right? So if you approach HR and you say, hey, I have a grievance, I want to talk about my manager, but I want to keep this conversation private. They should keep it private anyway, unless there is a further issue. Then they may need to take different approach. But I would approach HR rather than, because maybe in your mind you can think, I am going to approach my manager's boss and go speak directly to them, or I've seen this happening. No kidding here. People went directly to the CEO. And the CEO was clueless, didn't even know what was going on. And they listened to the employee, but then, of course, they had to get HR involved. So when it comes to grievances, HR is going to get involved. Um, Especially if you approach them. But if they don't know anything about it, there's nothing that they can do to help you. You need to speak up. So if you feel comfortable, approach your HR department. There are multiple ways that they can handle this conversation. Usually they'll listen to you and then they'll try to investigate, meaning they may speak to their manager and try to understand the situation. Usually HR listen to both sides before they talk about actionable steps and the different things that we can do. But it may be a time that you may need to involve HR, because if you try everything, maybe right now you're not in a position that you can just leave your job. You have to continue on, but you also need to protect yourself, right? You need to protect your mental health. And yeah, if your company offer those resources, an employee assistance program or any other resource, try that as well. Dealing with difficult people means different things for each one of us, because as Theresa showed, we all have different personalities and different ways that we show up in the workplace, different ways that we want to get our tasks done, right? So my recommendation is try to talk to HR as the ultimate thing, because you already approached the person. And after the investigation or whatever way HR leads the conversation, like I said earlier, it may be time that you get back on the market and you start looking, because I wrote a post today about this. It's like and Teresa already mentioned this. We hear this saying that we leave managers, we usually leave managers, not a company. But I would challenge you all to think a little bit different about this, because usually, yes, you have an issue with your manager, but there's more behind it. Do you still love the work you're doing? Are you happy in that environment? Let's say you want to work from home, but now they ask you to go back to the office, or there's somebody new in the leadership team that changed the whole way things are happening, inside the company. So there's usually more than just the manager. So trying to reflect on that, and like I said, think of the self-awareness, your self-awareness, and how's the job, like, is it just the manager? Try to have that conversation. So there are different things that you can try. But even, if you go to HR and that's the ultimate thing that you may try, and that doesn't lead anywhere, then it may be time that you seriously, like, go back on the market and start looking for, a different job. So how do you feel about going to HR? It really depends. Like I said, it depends on the perception that you have and the way that HR, because HR is different in each company. Let me just say that, because it is. In some companies, you have this perception that is really people centric. And in other places, it may be a little more not so much. So, yeah, but I get that HR gets a bad rap, but I want to make this clear for everyone out there. Not every HR department or every HR employee is, not thinking about you or not trying to help you. That's not how it works. I mean, there are people out there who really want to help you and want to make the workplace better for employees. So, yeah, this is kind of what I had. And I want to hear from people, if you feel comfortable. Like, you can just say yes or no. You don't need to go further. And if you don't want to, but if you want to, we're here. We're happy to help. We're happy to answer questions. Um, did you ever had to deal with a difficult manager? I mean, we both had
Yeah.
experiences like that. So we just want to hear, if you're live, if you're here and you want to, just say yes, drop a yes or drop a no in the chat. Just let us know that you're here. The only way that we know that you are in this live event is by saying hello in the comments. Otherwise, we don't know that you're here. So, yeah.
Good point, Anna. And I love what you shared about going to HR. HR is both of our background, right? So we both worked in HR departments for a long time. And I have to say that the HR department I was in, it was very people centric. Like, I can only say really good things about it. And I'm fortunate that that's where I got my training and I learned everything that I know about HR. If an employee would have came to us and say they have these complaints about their manager, the way we would have handled it is, first of all, we would listen, and then we first would figure out, are those minor complaints, like, is this a clash of personalities but no one is doing something seriously wrong? Then if that's the case, can we have a conversation with both of them? How can we get the manager and the employee on the same page? How can we help them to work better together? Or on the other hand, if we have the impression like, no, this is a situation where a manager is creating a hostile work environment, or they're actually intimidating or threatening employees, that's a whole different situation. That's when we would start an investigation. We would look, how are other employees feeling about that situation? What we would interview the manager. Obviously, that is going to be kept confidential. So there would be, depending on the situation, different ways to approach it. But the goal really in my HR department was, we're there for the employees. How can we help them to be in a better position? Also help the managers. Maybe the manager needs training. Maybe they need help on better communicating with their employees, setting different expectations. So what can we do to improve that situation? And my last bit of advice here is, if you're in a situation where you try talking to your manager, and then you said nothing happened, you did go above them to either their manager, to HR, and they are not handling it in the way that you wish it would have been handled, that tells you a lot about the company you're working for. you've tried to have 2 conversations, things are not improving, you are miserable, you know this might not be the company that values you, that respects you as an employee, that values your work. So at that point, I do believe it is time to at least consider alternatives. Are there other managers in that company where you can move to a different department? Or is it time to look at different companies? And as I always say, the best step to approach that is getting clarity. Start by getting really clear on like, what is it that you need in your career? If your mental health is suffering, what do you need to get to a better spot? How do you want your work and career to look like? Once you have that clarity, it makes it a lot easier to like, okay, you can compare that to what you currently have and then make a good decision of, am I staying or am I going? And if you decide to go, you know exactly what you're looking for, which makes it a lot easier to find it. Again, as Anna said, if you have any questions at all, please drop them in the chat. And do you have anything else to add to our topic on difficult managers at this point?
No, I think we hit on the points that we wanted to hit. And, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop in the chat, or I'm going to check, see if there's anything on LinkedIn just to make sure, because we addressed all we wanted to address here. And yeah, I mean, it comes down to what I always like to say. It's like, it's about you,
Yes.
right? It's about how, like, you may be working for this amazing, well-known company that, everybody, wants to work for, but how are you feeling inside that environment? Like, if you are a slower paced person and you are in a fast-paced environment where they expect you to work no matter what time, or, just get things done. It's like that's the main goal. That's not going to work for you. It doesn't matter how much, maybe you're making a good amount of money, but like if there's that disconnect on like a management style, and not just the management style, but also like the culture itself, and you're always going to feel like a fish out of water, right? Like it's just not the place for you. So in that case, that's why I mentioned this earlier, the self-awareness piece. What do I need, like, right now, right? Like, can I, maybe I need to stay on the job for a couple months, so what are the resources I have? And the company offer mental health benefits that I can use. Do I need to see somebody? Do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to have a conversation with my manager? Whatever you need to assess what you need first, and then start building that plan, like Theresa always said about the clarity, right? Like, start thinking about, okay, how am I going to make my next move? What do I need to make my next move? Like, do I have enough clarity to find my next job, or to go, for what I want to do next, right? Because as I wrote today, and I'll say it again, like, sometimes you have a good manager, but your manager is not in a culture that is suitable for them either.
True.
So it's going to be really hard for them to stand up for you, because they are afraid they're going to lose their job. And when they think, okay, if I do X, I may get Z, and next thing I know, I am gone, they may not do it. Or a good manager in the wrong environment can become a poor manager,
Yes.
because they don't have the training, they don't have the resources, they don't have anybody to go to. When I also wrote today about the managing people is a roller coaster ride. It is. We're all
Yes.
different. We all have different things going on in our lives, right? So we prefer different things, different management styles. So if after you try, having conversations, and you do what you can, but maybe it's kind of, you need something else,
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
love leaving it on that note, Anna. It is really about you. What do you need?
Hmm.
And that's from where you need to make your next decision on where to move forward.
Yeah.
All right. It was great being live with you again. We're going to be back next Thursday, and next Thursday is going to be our last live for this year. Not forever, for sure, but it's going to be the last live in this Career Life series for 2022. And it's going to be a special episode because you get a chance to ask us anything. We're going to be posting about it, and then you can send us questions before or show up live next Thursday. And we're super excited to answer all of your questions.
Yes, I'm super excited as well. So yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't believe it's gonna be our 13th episode
I
next week.
know.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, thank you all for being here. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, and we will see you again next Thursday.
Yes, bye.